Hello, hello.
Hi again. How are you?
Hello again.
Still doing good? Still? It's
Doing
only been
good.
like 5 seconds since we talked last. All right, now, guys, we are going to try some more trance channeling. So, Erik, hi, sweetie, again.
Yes, indeed.
Do you think that you can shove Kim out of the way and take her over like a puppet so we can talk to you? I love it. I see your old familiar body movements and facial expressions. It's so cool.
He says, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can.
Well, we'll at
He's
least
just
try.
being goofy. All right. Well, if any of you out there watching this haven't seen this before, this is where I just gently take my spiritual self and step aside and allow Erik to come in to use my body to express himself. And of course, many of you have asked. Yes, I do pray for protection. Yes, I do ask Erik and my guides and everybody else on the light side to assist this process. So please keep that in mind. I will see you guys on the other side. And Elisa, I'll just ask you again to keep us on time. You can let Erik know when you're done talking, and then he'll just transition back.
Sounds good.
So, okay. Hope all these glares in the background aren't too much. Got all my windows open.
Bon voyage.
Adios.
Bye.
Okie dokie, alrighty. What's up, Mama?
Hi, sweetie. I miss you so much.
You know I love you.
I know. I love you more. Wish I could come and hug you. Just get into the screen
You
and
will.
hug that little body of yours.
You will soon. You will soon, Mom. I'll hug you soon.
Oh, good. All right. Well, first of all, I want to ask. Kim is kind of new at trance channeling. Does she sometimes try to sneak in and take back over every once in a while?
Well, sometimes she can have a hard time maintaining. It's a basically the way I can explain it to you guys to understand it the best. It's maintaining a constant state of surrender, so to speak. So maintaining that constant state of surrender can be really fucking hard. I mean, so many people try it, jump in and out, jump back and forth. But when people trance channel me, I can at least help them try to maintain that constant state of surrender. But it can be hard, especially when you're new at it. A lot of people have fear with it. Kim's biggest fear is peeing her pants.
Oh,
don't tell her I told you that. Her biggest fear is letting go too much to where she pees her pants. So there you have it.
Just tell her that you're not going to let that happen.
I won't let that happen. I'll take care of her.
Yeah, or just sneak over to her grocery list and write down depends. What about that? Oh, you laughed just the same way you used to. That's awesome. Well, I'll give you a couple of choices of what to talk about. Let's see. One is how to harness the power you always have. In other words, everybody has power. They just give it away. Self-empowerment. How do we become self-empowered? Or you can talk about how to be self-directed and not put your self-esteem in other people's hands or in the hands of the media or whatever. You choose.
Well, those are both pretty similar. Self-power, having control over yourself versus putting your power in other people's hands is a huge struggle that so many relate to, so many people go through, and harnessing your own power and sense of self-power is tricky, and a lot of people struggle with that because, they depend on people or situations or even outcomes. They depend on their expectations to bring them to that point, that sense of power. So when shit doesn't work out like they expected or like they thought, then they feel powerless. So harnessing your own self-power is, in sense of that, is all about relying on yourself. Because when you rely on situations to help you define your power, that's when it gets all fucked up, and people get down and depressed on themselves, and think that they don't have any power, they don't have any control over anything. That's another thing too, is the whole control factor. But Mom, it's all about relying on yourself. When people know that they can rely on themselves,
And how do you do that?
then, well, it's tricky. It's hard because people nowadays place not just their power, but their value in other people and situations. So going back to the core of who you are, finding out who you are and what feels right to you, no matter what situation it is, honoring your natural instincts will help you rely on yourself. And no matter what that brings you to, part of that is letting go of expectations, because people might say, well, I followed my intuition, but it turned out to be shitty.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Sometimes you're supposed to learn from that shit. Sometimes you're supposed to move on and learn from that and take that as a lesson. But
damn those lessons.
People always,
can't they just give us
right.
Cliff Notes? Okay? Seriously, Cliff Notes.
People think if they follow their intuition, it's always going to be great. It's always going to be glorious and easy. But that's not the case. Your intuition is going to lead you to learning about yourself, evolving to a higher sense of who you are. So the most important thing is, I guess it goes back to following your natural instincts, Mom, because when you do that, then you rely on yourself, then you can harness that power.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, so I guess it also would mean to be completely self-empowered, you probably kind of have to know who you authentically are, know your authentic self.
Well, that's true. And again, a lot of people in today's society base that off of what's around them, what kind of car you got, what kind of job you got, what kind of relationship you're in, how many kids you have. So being able to know and understand who you are and define yourself outside of all of that, and also know where you come from, that higher connection to your higher self is important, Mom, because sometimes people lose their footing in life. They're not grounded in who they are. They're not grounded in their self. So whatever situation life brings them through, they kind of just wishy-washy. They're kind of just lofty and floating through life back and forth and not grounded in their own sense of self. Yeah. So that's really important, is knowing who you are before anything else, and not letting anything define that. Certain situations can build characteristics within you, but certainly don't define your source of who you are.
Yeah. And I guess you have to be emotionally honest with yourself and about yourself.
Yeah, that can be pretty raw. There's people that can be completely emotionally honest with themselves, but a lot of times people shut that out. People deny themselves that because sometimes it fucking hurts, and people don't like to hurt. So they're not so honest with themselves. Mm. But when you're truly honest with yourself, you can really learn, really come out on the top, really come out shining.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to be honest with myself about, well, I'm not a jealous person, but that's the only thing I can think of. But to really say, sometimes I'm really petty, or sometimes I get insanely jealous. That's kind of hard to deal with. And you just want to blame everybody else. And make excuses for your petty actions or your jealous actions.
It is, and that's where people get caught up and they can't, or they, not that they can't be, that they don't want to be honest with themselves and thinking, am I being petty? Is this really worth the energy I'm putting into it? But when you can look at those, just being able to stop in that situation and acknowledge that you're being petty, or acknowledge that, all right, I'm acting like a shitbag, I'm being a little bit jealous, I need to knock it off. When you can actually just truthfully identify yourself in that situation, that's the first step, being able to stop it and do that. A lot of people won't even take a second look. More and more people, though, are trying to. More and more people are trying to get to the core of the causes of things, or why things are happening in certain ways. So that emotional honesty, being truthful with yourself, is important. A lot of people are working on it, but it's hard. It hurts. It can be, because people want to think good of themselves. And if they look back and see, man, that was all my fault, that was me acting like this or that, a lot of people have a hard time stepping outside of their ego to be able to do that, to be able to admit that.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's make an example. Talk about, walk me through an example. Like, oh, say there's a couple, and we'll just say the man has lost his power in the situation, and the woman is the one with all the power. Maybe she's the breadwinner, and he feels like he really doesn't have a say in anything in the family because she's the one bringing home the bacon. How does he get his power back?
Well, that's kind of a tricky situation, because really in a relationship it should be not one has power over the other. Even if one is a breadwinner and one's not, you should still try to maintain equality. But if one's feeling powerless,
it doesn't have to
in
be
a
the
relationship,
like
like they don't have a voice, or like they don't have space to be themselves, that's where, this isn't a hidden message, that's where it's all about communication. If all of a sudden she takes over and she's the breadwinner, part of that is people. There's a lot of people out there that don't like change. When things change, we as humans tend to resist. We tend to resist that change. So being able to be adaptive to that change is important, and just understand it, be more accepting. That goes back to ego, Mom, because sometimes people have that need for things to be the same and control the routine and things, even in relationship types. So being able to step outside that ego and accept change, being more adaptable, and communicating how you feel is important.
Yeah, because it might be the woman doesn't want all the power, but he just assumes and just has lost his voice. But so yeah, I guess communication. Just real quick, because I do want to talk about one other thing, and we have 2 minutes on this subject. So your final tips, basically, get in touch with your authentic self. Of course, that does take in part being emotionally honest with yourself. What other tips for getting your power back? I was kind of so fascinated with watching your facial expressions and all the familiar Ericness that I wasn't paying attention to the first part.
Well, part of it too is, it's going to sound funny, getting your power back takes vulnerability. People think it's one or the other, but you have to be vulnerable with yourself. In a relationship, you have to be vulnerable with your partner to actually have that sense of equality and get your self-power back. The best thing as far as tips that I can encourage people is communicate, not just with your partner, but with yourself, how you're feeling. Be honest about it, because that shit's going to resurface and resurface until you acknowledge it, until you identify it, and work through it, process through it. Otherwise, it just sort of eats away at you. If there's something bothering you, and if it's that sense of being powerless in a relationship, you've got to talk about it. You've got to communicate with yourself and with your partner.
Yeah, that takes an open heart and a vulnerable position. All right, well, thank you. I'm going
I
to
love you.
I'm going to keep Skype on because I'm just going to trim this section so that we don't have to bring Kim back in. But trim. All right.